My name's Lacey Miller, and I wrote my research paper on domestic violence, and that's what I'm going to do my presentation on. Domestic violence is defined as a pattern of coercive behavior used by one person to gain power and control over another in an intimate or familial relationship. Some synonyms that are often used for domestic violence are battery, abuse, family, spousal relationship or dating violence, and intimate partner violence. The Centers for Disease Control tells us that 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men have experienced severe physical violence in an intimate partner in their lifetime. Domestic violence has many faces. Any or all of the following types of violence or abuse may occur in a domestic violence relationship: emotional abuse, verbal abuse, sexual violence, financial abuse, physical abuse, and or stalking. The effects of domestic violence are devastating and are oftentimes deadly. Physical abuse presents itself as pushing, kicking, punching, hair pulling, forcing sex on someone, choking, strangling, throwing things at the victim, and using guns or knives to threaten, injure, or intimidate the victim. One of the things that are not mentioned here is if you block someone that says they want to leave the room, you block them physically from being able to leave the room, that is also considered domestic violence. Choking and strangling, that's something that kind of is like, they're the same to a lot of people. However, choking, the definition for choking is actually choking on a piece of food, whereas strangulation is the act of actually choking someone with your hands, so strangling someone with your hands. However, it's very important because a lot of times victims don't understand that, so they will say they were choked, and we just have to meet them where they're at. Instead of correcting them, you just go on and you use the termination that they've been using. So that's just a little bit about that. Emotional and verbal abuse kind of go hand in hand. They present as threats, yelling, demeaning remarks about the victim's intellect and looks, anything that will run them down, like saying you're stupid or you weren't smart enough to figure that out, your hair looks bad. Humiliation, like publicly humiliating them. Mind games such as gaslighting, enlisting guilt in the victim and making them feel like it was their fault that they were being verbally attacked, and false hopes given to the victim. And this kind of runs us into the cycle of abuse. The cycle of abuse is actually very vicious, and many times it takes a woman 9 to 11 times before she actually leaves the violent relationship for good. They oftentimes go back, and we just have to be careful never to shame them for that, because we know that is what the statistics tell us. And as for the cycle, it starts with tension, where you feel like you're walking on eggshells. You have to be careful of everything that you say. You hear threats and you're intimidated. You fear, but you have guilt because you're told it was your fault. You did something wrong. And the abuser's behavior can become very unpredictable. Then it cycles down into the violence when the abuse actually begins. During this time, a lot of women consider getting PFAs, which is a good idea. However, the judges in the county that I live in like to always remind the victims, as do we as counselor advocates, that that PFA is only a piece of paper. And a lot of times when that piece of paper gets served, that is the most volatile time in the relationship, and the abuser will possibly do something very dangerous. They also, that's a lot of times when the emotional and financial abuse happen. As